Hi, everyone. Good evening. Very quickly, I'll give a background about myself before I kind of dive into what worked for me and what were my roadblocks, which I tried to clear. So, very quickly, I come from a journalism background. So, I am not at all from the traditional corporate sector background. I was a journalist for 15 years, between 2000 and 2015. I used to cover current affairs and law and terrorism and stuff like that. And then I moved into the corporate space as a risk analyst, intelligence risk analyst with Bank of America. I briefly had a stint looking into election related risks on Facebook. And then now at Target, I'm leading the intelligence program for Asia Pacific, and which intelligence also typically covers your risks around business resilience, internal, external risks, ERM related risks, as well as travel security program here at APAC. I am very shortly now changing gears into investigations, where I will be looking at risks both from, again, internal, external perspective, but related to ethical sourcing, supply chain, internal fraud, external frauds, supply chain related frauds, etc. So that's briefly my background. Like Kosha mentioned, I appeared for IRM level 2 in December, followed by the part 2 in January. That happened. No, yeah, I think it happened in November, and I cleared it in January. That's when the announcement happened about the results. Um, Before kind of going into level 2, I did level 1 because I needed to understand. Given my background, I did not have a very structured understanding of what risk landscape was. Some of the biggest takeaways for me was that risk is not a negative thing, that there are positive risks, and what could those positive risks be, how do they translate into opportunities, so on and so forth. So I did the level 1, which kind of gave me a foundational preparation for level 2. That said, level 2 does take a lot of your bandwidth in terms of just understanding the Bible that Paul Hopkins has written on the fundamentals of risk management. I'm hoping that by now all of you have had at least two reads of the book, if not at least one thorough read of the book from page 1 to the abbreviations, because there are your four E's and a zillion other T's and whatnot. Uh, it's good to have a first reading into the book. Like, I would assume that you all have read it. I have gotten a few of my notes here just to show how one of the things that I noticed was there's a lot of interconnectedness between each chapter and a lot of concepts. They all tailor into each other, and sometimes some of the terminologies are interchangeable. So, one of my significant recommendations is that please underline it or please make a note of it. Like, if I can just, okay, I have my notes here. I'm not sure if you guys can see this or not, but I have kind of written down the four E's. What would that mean? And then, similarly, I have kind of written down what is the opportunity risk, what is a hazard risk, what is a compliance risk, what is a control risk, so on and so forth, because a lot of these concepts are interchangeable. So as you prepare for level 2 examinations, please keep two things that I did was the minute I got the study guide available to us, I took a printout of that. I also took a printout of the book. I either put like you can either purchase it or take a printout, but my book is full of underlines and notes, etc. Keep the study guide as your guiding document. It is called a guide for a reason. Um, I would say that every time you go through the study guide, like you solve a question, it takes you to read chapter 3 and 4 together. It's not chronological, but it's chronological when you read it through the study guide. And please maintain that rhythm of study guide, because that is one key thing that helped me prepare for level 1 as well as level 2. As I was preparing, I was also supporting a lot of resiliency efforts within the organization. We were also going through COVID phase 2, wave 2 that India had seen. That was the time I was preparing for level 1 and then moved on to level 2. Didn't have a lot of time. We had a lot of things to do at office, but what helped me was the study guide and following the study guide rhythm and chronology that kind of helps you put various concepts into perspective. Because what I also observed was that some of these concepts are also overlapping into your phase 2 of the exams. So some of the chapters you would reread and revisit with a somewhat additional context in level 2. um, Besides your fundamentals, please do not be in a hurry to reply or to respond to the questions that pop up on your screen. Please read the question, reread the question, reread the question, because there is just like one word that would change the whole meaning of the question. And it'll give you like a completely different perspective on the risk. Like the whole risk would change. Mock questionnaire that IRM would have provided. um, I attempted the mock questionnaire 5 times because I have a habit of fast reading, and I used to like, take the crux out of the question, but not understand what the question exactly was. So I learned through my low scores in the mock drills, mock questionnaire, that please pause, please read, and then respond. Like I'll give you a very simple, example that got me, gave me a wake up call. There was a question around a cold storage and employees moving in and out of the cold storage, and then, somebody fell ill. Now, what would be the kind of control that would be put into place? Which is, what is it linked to? I always got the answer wrong, and I always had to refer to why the answer was wrong. uh, it was a very simple thing. You might in your understanding think that, oh, this could be an opportunity, this is a control issue, or this is, a compliance issue. But don't go by your own common sense entirely. Marry your common sense along with the textbook, and remember, keep the textbook as a Bible. If there is a conflict between your common sense and textbook, go with the textbook.
Yeah, so I
Because
agree. I second that. I think what generally happens is when you're going through the question, everything in terms of the terminology seems so much like you're reading every day, and you feel like, oh, the obvious answer to this is what it is. But unfortunately, like she said, you also have theory attached to it, and please go by that. So don't let your brain be confused in the sense that, so, like her example had the cold storage. I think my exam, we had like an oil spill question. So, going by common sense, I felt like, okay, the obvious answer to this is, answer A. But, if you're going by the principles laid down by ISO or COSO, you'll see that there is a difference to the answer. So, I'd suggest don't let your brain think too much on a question as well. Sometimes, go by your gut, go by your intuition, because you've read your textbook over and over again. And like she said, make sure your module 1 study is fundamentally extremely strong, because a lot of it is repeated in module 2. So when you go to module 2, do and there the study guide is pointing you out to those chapters of module 1 again. Don't skip it and say, oh, I've read it already 1 week back. Reread it, in fact, so that you're trying to reassure your brain also that you know the concept very well. Yeah, Torat.
yeah, also to Kosha's point, on module 2, your module 1 will challenge you and make you feel more confident about your common sense being in sync with the textbook. Your module 2 is going to again challenge you, but challenge you on the technicality of the words and the terminologies. You may think that the likelihood or frequency or magnitude in daily colloquial conversations, when you have conversations in office related to risks, you tend to use these words very casually. But remember, these are technical words when it comes to risk management, and your module 2 is going to put you to test on the technical aspects. It's not hardcore technical, but remember, the definitions would come into play. And particular call out is when you have those multiple choice questions with choose one option in the first thing and then marry that one option and or with the second list of multiple choice of questions. So you have to have a combination of multiple choice of questions. um, Understand that your this is where your logic will come into picture. So your first answer should sound logically sound according to the textbook. You may feel that Hopkins is also contradicting himself, or there are parts where Hopkins says choose according to the situation, because risk solutions are never absolute, or the risk is never absolute. Stick to the fundamental definitions or the concepts that are defined. If you haven't by chance read through the textbook by now, which is also a possibility, not unheard of, given so much is happening and work is also, still stick to the study guide, and read the textbook. If you cannot memorize it, read the textbook, but don't skip a single page, because you may feel that the bow tie diagram is given multiple times in multiple contexts. You need to remember that the bow tie diagram in the first half of the textbook is in a different context versus the second half of the textbook. So read. If you cannot memorize it, read and rely on common sense, but read, because without Hopkins, you're not going to be able to clear this. Like 100 guarantee you're not going to be able to clear this.
And also for the study guide, like you mentioned, it's an excellent tool, to guide you exactly through where you need to study what part from. I feel like I'm not saying this because I'm working at IRM or something of that sort, but I have also given multiple other competitive exams, and no other guide has, at this age, spoon fed you that, okay, for module 1, unit 1, you only need to refer to chapter 1, 2, 3. So go exactly by what they have said, because you don't need to go beyond that. Even if you just cover what they have, redirected to you by means of referring to Hopkins or say any other internal audit paper, even your external resources are as important as the Hopkins. So Hopkins is one thing, definitely. We were told that wear it like a hat on your head. It's a very, very important book. So go through that, but do not miss out on referring even to the external resources. They are as important as your Hopkins. Don't need to memorize the external resources in the sense that, oh my God, there's so much information. Maybe a few of the definitions are contradictory in the Hopkins as well as the other, external resources. Go ultimately by, your Hopkins and your gut. But in terms of situations, which are going to be asked, situational questions towards the end of the exam, these external resources are very helpful, because you'll immediately remember that, okay, yes, I have read this somewhere and this can be applied to this situation.
A couple of call outs on the external resources, the case studies, to read them, because one version or the other of that case study is likely to kind of pop up in at least one or two questions, and every mark matters. There are tables that compare all your risk management frameworks. Please read through them. That again, you might feel that COSO is similar to IRM, is similar to ISO, is similar to the Canadian one that
Orange
is
and
in
also, yeah.
orange book, etc. But there are like few tweaks here and there where that would change the dynamics of it. um, Special call out on the COSO ERM cube. uh, do read through that, understand where what sits in your cube on all sides, because you will have questions around that kind of challenge you on the cube part, which will be like a case study, and then they will say, according to the COSO cube, which are the 2 steps you will take, and then you will be like thinking through which are the cubic steps that we would be taking. So uh, try and spend some time like just understanding and concentrating on the cube. What I did was, just ahead of the exams, I kind of listed out everything from the guideline according to, okay, this is like my ERM 2 unit 1, which are the chapters, unit 2, which are the chapters, unit 3, which are the chapters. So what I would do is I would read through the study guide, and I would then prepare my notes, which basically says like 4 management styles. What are these management styles? And then I would like, because that was the only way I could remember. I needed something to either underline or write. You may have your own styles. Another lesson or a key takeaway for me was part 2 of the exam. Do not skip the external reading. Optional, you can choose whether you want to read or not, but do not skip the external readings, because your part 2 has probably more balance of like 50% from the textbook and 50% from the external. Level 1, you still can take a judgment call on what parts of the external reading you want to retain. Personally, for me, the definitions were very conflicting. Like, I always found Hopkins saying one thing and then Orange Book saying something else, and then there was another case study which approached the same risk in a different way, etc. It was too much hodgepodge in my head, so I took a judgment call on skipping certain parts that I was confused about even as I was studying and reading through them. But what I did was I went through the diagrams. I religiously understood the diagrams and the entire cycle that it kind of portrays. Case studies, 100%. I would say please focus on case studies as well. Um, See if you can at the end of the day, just go through the entire abbreviations. Yeah, you have a list of abbreviations at the end of Hopkins. What I did was I hid the definitions, but I kept the abbreviations on, and I tried to understand or recall as many as I could. There is also a list of diagrams which refer. So I also went through the diagrams once. There's an entire list, so just go only through the diagrams, because you will have diagram questions. So don't think that there are going to be no diagram questions. There are going to be diagram questions which will say that, okay, this is the situation. Now, according to this, where are you going to place what, and how is it all going to tie up? And you will have to fill in and figure out which part will go into what part of the diagram. So please go through the diagrams. Don't think that bow tie is getting repeated multiple times, so why should I read
Yeah,
it?
so they may show you a bow tie diagram and they'll give you basically say firm is what you all have in terms of the impact. They may
Yeah.
say I is the missing letter, what do you think I is? It could be as simple as that. So these are brownie points for you to earn. A case study could get confusing in terms of, say for example, interpretation wise you feel it's something, but by theory it's something else. But in terms of diagrams and all, for sure short, these I mean, although there's no negative marking in the exam, for sure that these are my brownie points, and it's a yes for sure. So I also had a lot of graphs in my paper for module 2, where they'd shown the risk tolerance and appetite graph. I think it's I can't remember, but in your risk appetite chapter on risk appetite in Hopkins, so I had that diagram as well. So make sure you don't skip graphs and diagrams, because they do ask questions on that too. Yeah, Tora.
Yeah. The other thing is, like, for module 2, I felt like I needed to understand, because your risks and different kind of risks are described so many times, multiple times over through the textbook. I found that corporate governance piece, the audit piece, what does, the like the hierarchy of the CHRO versus, like, who is responsible for what, the roles and responsibility part in the module 2 is something that I needed to focus a little more on, because that is like clear cut SOP related, systems related thing. Like, your chief risk officer is only responsible for coordinating, so on and so forth. And what will be the audit be responsible for in the non-governmental or the charities section. There's a different framework of corporate governance that comes into play. Do focus on those also in understanding, because it's not just about the different types of risks, etc., and likelihood, etc. But it's also about like how the corporate sector governs this, what kind of frameworks would come into picture. So you might be given a situation in the exam where there's a lot of chaos happening in XYZ company, and suddenly the company realizes that the share costs are tanking, and they hire a CHRO. Now, what are the top 10 steps that the CHRO is going to take, and chronologically? So these are some of the things that are really going to come into play. So please also focus on the corporate governance, the internal audit. The reason why I'm saying so is that when you're reading so much from Hopkins and when you're constantly consumed by it, you have a sense of fatigue and you feel like, let's just skip 2 pages. Please don't skip 2 pages. Take a break, but don't skip 2 pages because those 2 pages can prove costly in terms of, your marks. So those were pretty much, the things that I did, because I also have a very dicey memory and I tend to forget things very quickly. uh, so I made a lot of notes and I focused on these things. The other thing I would also say is how I figured out what are my gaps in understanding was by multiple times trying the mock exam. So I would, my first exam, I would only get 10 marks. And I was like, okay, these are the concepts that I know nothing about. Let me just focus on that. Then I would again appear after reading through the entire model, again appear for it. Okay, those are covered, but these are the new points. Therefore, multiple times applying or going through the mock drill was something that helped me understand that, okay, these are my concepts that are weaker, and this is where I need to focus on. There are some aspects that I can't remember right now clearly because I just could not understand. Like, I just was struggling with those. So I decided to move to other aspects and not spend too much time. I thought that, okay, 1 or 2 questions, I can rely on my common sense. If I get it, fine. If I don't get it, it's okay. Don't be too hard on yourself. But do give those dry runs multiple times. That will help you understand till the very last minute. I think I've gone on for way too long and I'm going to take a pause and start taking any questions that I
Yeah.
can address.
So feel free, all of you. I think Maithili, you would send on the chat box where is the study guide. So if you log into your VLE access, you have your VLE access. It's right there. It's a downloadable file, and you can print it. So go to module 1 and you'll see a study guide. Go to module 2, you'll see another study guide.
Yeah, you might have to download each, like, I don't even know what to call it. Like, it's not a module, but like each section, maybe.
Okay, Mangesh has, Maithili, you can just try scrolling through your VLE and see what we're referring to and let us know if you're stuck. Mangesh has a question, Toral. Could you explain case study related questions?
So I would say, hypothetically, and Kosha, feel free to jump in, please.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, say an X company has launched a product in the market. That product has gone successful for the first 6 months, and then suddenly, is struggling for space or whatever, and then the company is not able to figure out, and then there are stakeholder questions that come into picture, and that there's not just one stakeholder, there's an entire universe of stakeholder. And then the company decides to hire an internal auditor or a chief risk officer. um, the chief risk officer has been given a mandate of a very broad mandate, which you need to understand and kind of break it down. So let's say a broad mandate of putting together a risk framework in place according to COSO framework. You know, so
Right.
that chief risk officer, what are the first 3 steps that he would take? Which are the 3 roles that he would make report into him? What are the changes that he would make in the existing structure? And these details would be given to you in the question. Answers are all there in the question itself.
Correct.
It's for you to read the question over and over again before you hit the send button. And guys, one thing I didn't share earlier on is that after you have attempted all the questions, take a pause for 10 seconds, revise those questions, because oftentimes what happens is, this has happened with me. I have changed my answers during revision, which I pray to God so glad that I did that. Otherwise, I would have not gotten marks. Um, it's only after you've gone through the whole thing you realize that, okay, this could be a different answer. So give some time, like in the end of your exam, and you will have ample time. 90 minutes is like a good amount of time for you to attempt the question. 90 minutes or 120 minutes?
It's 90.
90 minutes.
90 minutes, 60 questions.
Correct.
So also towards the end, I mean, it'll be a jumble of questions, but most of your case study questions are towards the end. So make sure if there are simple questions in the beginning, like what is risk as per ISO, don't waste time. Because if you want to attempt the case study questions well, the paragraphs are quite long. It's like a long story and you don't want to rush for time to complete it and then go all wrong. So time yourself accordingly. See which section, you can see the sections on the panel in the left. So if you feel like, okay, the beginning is quite easy to do. For the definitions, like Toral said, if most of you are finding it difficult, I use the rule of elimination. It was very easy for me. So I'd remember, okay, that in ISO, these 3 keywords I underlined and I was like, okay, if these 3 keywords are fitting in, this is ISO, this is COSO, and this is IRM. I found the orange book definition too vast and confusing. So I was like, I know the other 3. If it's orange book, then, I'm going to use the rule of elimination and select orange book for that definition. So, for definitions, you don't need to, sort of memorize or anything, but use keywords, underline and understand the concept. So it's easy for you to remember. Okay. Mitesh has a question. Methili, you can go next.
Can I?
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. So it's definitely an insightful session that I'm having right now. Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions. First is I've completed my module, right? But I was waiting for the mock to start up with the mock. Do you think so? We are kind of 12 days to the examinations, and my exam is scheduled on 6th. Is 12 days enough to complete the mock? So if I do mock every day, will it be helpful, or it's a lesser bit of time to 12 days or?
Toral, you'd like to take that and I'll add in.
Sure. I would say 12 days enough, but I would say, I hope you are also including module 2 into this. Although you will have a little bit of a break. So if you're going to prepare only for module 1, 12 days is enough. Just do every day, give a mock exam. What I would do is I would give the exam at the end of the day, just before sleeping. And then next day I would get up fresh and I know that these are my gaps. And because also when you are giving your responses, it records. So you can go back and see where you went wrong,
Correct.
Okay. The other question that I had was, I did my reading as per the route, or as per the process that was like read, do, and then I went back and then I did the whole reading stuff. We also had the self-assessment questions, and I used to get a lot of the times right once at the first writing FTS first time right. Do you see mock questions in same manner or same type questions, or it's completely different?
Your mock exam is to give you a flavor of what your actual exam is going to be like.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's not like any other, say you would have given some exam here. It's not that, mock exam is, they are not going to have questions from there.
Okay.
It's just for you to know how you're going to be appearing for exam on the final day.
Okay. And the last question that I had was, I always believed that it would be an optional, alternative question. So are there any descriptive questions as well? Something like in case study, I would write or type in what my intent was. It's just selection of options,
It's
right?
all MCQ, multiple choice questions. So when I say, when we say case study, your case study is in the form of a story. Answering also Mangesh's question here side by side. Although these case studies are, they're sample case studies, sometimes you may feel that this could be from a live case study that you have read in the Hopkins.
Okay.
Still, even then, if you know the answer, sure, the 1 or 2 situations might be tweaked. So don't go blindly by that, oh, yeah, I read this in Hopkins, for sure, this is the answer. Reread it and assure yourself and then attempt it. But everything is multiple choice, whether there's no subjective, there's no typing out of your intent or justifying why you think it's the right answer. It's all MC.
Okay. Okay. And last question that I have is, how much is the best time to be spent on each of the questions? Let's say I buy the point that something which is simple, it should be very quick so that you have time for the case study. But
Correct.
still, let's say a minute or let's say 30 seconds or 45, some benchmark or something, if you have, if you can guide us on that.
I can give you something that I did. So when I attempted the exam, what I did was I took the first 5 minutes to just scroll through all the questions without attempting any response. I scrolled through all the questions. Then I started going one by one, and I had a hard stop in if in the first 30 seconds I feel confident, and I'm being very rigid here about 30 seconds. If you feel confident that you know the answer, then I stick to it. Otherwise, I would just flag it and move on.
Okay.
Then I would start attempting the longer ones. One of the things would that was a roadblock for me was that because we are all in the business of risk management, for me in my head, when you are in an exam situation, I had like Hopkins telling me something, my personal experience as a risk manager and real life situations, because what you're going to see in your screens are not unheard of situations. It's very likely that many of you may have actually
True.
faced those situations in your
True.
working life.
Yeah.
So do not go by how you solved that situation. Please do not.
Yeah.
You may have
Generalize
done
the
it.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you may have done it in a brilliant way, but then go by what Hopkins says.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Absolutely, I
Uh,
agree with it. Yeah.
that helped me a lot. Thank you so much.
Most
Yeah.
welcome, Ritesh. Good luck. Maithili.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
So, are you talking about the essential reading part?
Yeah.
That is only
Yes.
the guide one, right?
Right. Right.
That I understood.
But
Okay, fine.
if you open the essential reading, there will be an option for a guide in that. It's just not the entire. If you mind, I mean, if you don't mind, you can just share your screen. I'll just check.
Yes, definitely. Just a sec.
An only related question to what Maithili said. Jaspal, I know you asked a question on external resources. It's on your VLE. Before you start the module, you will get the list of external.
Yes, so
readings.
these are all your external readings. Jaspal, if you go on essential readings, all of this UK corporate governance code, guidance on board effectiveness, just scroll down, Maithili.
Just a
Your,
sec.
There is one thing which is mandatory reading. Hopkins
yes,
is mandatory.
correct.
External reading is essential, and then there
Yes.
is optional.
Yes. So, Maithili, you can go to getting started. So when I gave it in June 21, there are a few changes. So I'm just kind of, and my access is now gone, obviously.
No, you have to go into unit 1.
Unit 1, yeah.
This
Just
is
close
similar
it.
to what I.
Yeah, I think because you recently gave it. Mine was a year back, and they've revised the way the portal looks also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go to now scroll up ERMC2 unit 1 that you need to download and print out. Can you click on that?
Yeah, I'm clicking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now keep scrolling. So this is your page 1. Basically, it tells you what your learning outcomes are, etc.
Right.
Then you need to download all of this and take a printout.
Yeah.
This one, right?
And I would just like to add up here. Mitesh here. Just scroll above. Just scroll above.
Yes.
Just above more. See, there is a wheel there.
Yes.
Yeah. You could just click there.
And do print.
Print this chapter or print
right.
book. So you have all the pages. Yes.
Yes.
The essential readings there. I use this option a lot. I have even downloaded and took a printout of this. It helps me a lot in terms of getting the outline, what the module is trying to say, the unit is trying to say, or what is the intended objective.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can highlight these outcomes also, as well as where you need to read what from, And if you don't want to keep referring to this, like Toral said, make a note of it on the side, write down that, okay, for unit 1, I need 1, 2, 3, for unit 2, I need 1, 2, 3, and so on. So that during the exam, or maybe like 2 to 3 days before the exam, you're not again opening something. If you're not going to be printing it, don't get into the habit of opening this VLE, during the exams and all. Also, another tip, don't be scared while the exams are on. There'll be innumerable people writing and discussing things on the VLE, because obviously, you are connected to candidates across 140 countries who are giving the exam. Someone will say this exam was tough, my paper, or whatever you ask. I would suggest completely avoid reading all of this and don't confuse yourself. Stick by what you have done. At the end, you don't want to forget what you have read also. So I think Toral will agree with me, because last year in June, my time, what happened was, because of the COVID situation, there were a lot of people discussing a lot of things on the VLE. So I completely avoided, did not respond to anything, and did not want to pay attention to it, because don't divert your head. Go by your book, study what you know, because at the end, last minute, you're not going to be able to do anything as well, right? So stick to what you have done, and you should be good to go.
Okay, and my second query was like when I give the module questions, the last 60 questions, right? The mock ones, then I feel that there are multiple questions with multiple answers, and then the problem arises. Normally, what is happening? I
No.
am partially correct. Otherwise, one is missing, or else one is added. So in that case, what is happening? Like marking is done in how the marking is done then in that case.
So, I mean, of course, since it's an MCQ exam, you may have a different interpretation to it, but you do have an examiner's report. If you see on the, you can go by that and see how they've judged past exams as well. They will, I mean, say if 80% of the people have felt this is right, according to them, their examiner's report will be that way. But you go by your gut and don't, I would keep reiterating again and again what Toral also said. Reread the question, go by what you have said, and don't, sort of confuse yourself with common colloquial language, right? So go by what you have read and use your mock questions, as she said, to kind of keep practicing so that you know what the exam is going to be looking like.
Maithili, and Kajal, I'll come to your question with a similar response as well.
The true and false. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things is like this whole, multiple questions have similar answers. I had that right in the beginning when I tried doing it. What helped me was that when I was going through the gaps, that why is this answer wrong? I was 100% sure this is correct. I would go to Hopkins, and this is where I used the PDF. So I would do a control F and go to Hopkins, that part of that Hopkins chapter, whichever chapter it would be, and realize that there is just one word that changes the meaning of the entire question, and therefore your other responses get eliminated. So see if you want to try, doing that in terms of like when you're 100% sure that this answer is correct and it is wrong, you can really try and go back to Hopkins. So keep your Hopkins with you. Don't let your Hopkins go off till you have given your second module. I'm telling you, you need to just drink, sleep, and eat Hopkins during
I agree.
this period.
Yeah. And I think that's a good solution, because most often what happens is the thing is, because this is a multiple choice question exam, don't try to think that it's very easy and because options are given, you can. In fact, I would say a theory paper is easier than an MCQ, because here it's like either you know the answer or you don't know. So yes, go back to your book and don't ignore it, saying, okay, I don't know this concept, maybe I'll cover up with another concept and get my marks there. Make sure whatever you're reading, you're clear about. Reread the part, even when you're doing sample questions at the end of every unit. I don't know if you all still have it. We had it in June 21. But yes, you have 3 to 4 sample questions at the end of every unit. You'll see those are pretty easy as compared to the mock exams, where you'll feel like, oh, sample questions, all of them are so easy. I got all of them right. But when you move on to your mock exam, that's where you will feel that, okay, these are a little more tougher than that. But everything is in the book. Everything is either in the essential reading or in your main study guide. So reread that part. Don't, I would say, if there's something that is not going right in the mock paper, instead of being scared, take it as an advantage that you already know that this concept is not very clear in your head. Reread, because you still have time for the examination.
Yeah, Kajal, to your true and false question, again, that was something that I struggled. In fact, a lot of students in my batch struggled. This was a question that got discussed into students forum quite a bit, I think. What really happens in true or false is true, 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 false, false, true. There are multiple combinations. So what happens is one of the statements is correct and the second one is not correct. What I did was I almost pretty much got all of those questions wrong, and therefore I took that as an opportunity to go back to the responses that were given. So they explain also when it shows as a wrong response, the VLE module explains to you in your response why it has gone wrong and what would be the correct response. So read through that, refer through Hopkins, and you will understand that why our choice of true, true, or true, false was a bit off the book. When they are explaining things as to why your choice of, say, a second option or the first option or both the options is wrong, it will almost pretty much always link back to some or the other module in some of the other chapter. They will call it out as well. So you can use that to kind of just refer. But at the end of the day, remember, if there are keywords that are popping up in your true and false questions which marry either with the diagram or the abbreviation or the definition or a concept or a case study, uh, remember those keywords like what Kosha did. That will come in a little handy. But in the true and false, again, whenever you are confused, read the case study all over again.
It might take a little more of your time. That's fine. You have 90 minutes. It's more than sufficient to give the exam. Start practicing the mock question in a way to read the questions a little faster, up your reading speed. Again, by fast I don't mean go that fast that you skip words and you read, say, what is which of the following is not a definition of risk. Don't skip the not and just choose, because this has happened to me as well. Because on the day of the exam there are so many things you're thinking about. You're like, there are 60 questions and 6 units. I don't know what I'm going to be tested on, what diagram, what graph. Because I also took 5 minutes, like Toral said, I'm very used to having a reading time for every exam during college and school days. So sometimes my mind would tend to wander that, okay, in the section 2, I already feel like I don't know one of the answers, but avoid doing that. This is like these are like few suggestions of what you should not do. Be presently where you are, although you're using your 5 minutes to allocate your time as to how much time you want to give to each section. When you're at section 1, focus on section 1 and don't think ahead. Yeah, don't waste time. Take enough time, read properly, and attempt the answers well.
Yeah, personally, I found module 2 a little more difficult and challenging. And so I would say, please, understand what a unitary board is, what a supervisory board is, what an executive appointment versus non-executive appointment, roles of audits and chief risk officers, and, simply put, like your corporate governance frameworks.
Yeah.
Also
You can
related
also
to
take out common roles. So I had done that wherever I felt like, there are few managerial positions where roles and responsibilities, of course, you don't have to read through all 25 or 30 of them. But again, I would use keywords and I would find common roles and responsibilities. So, and in fact, I don't know, by chance, I did get asked a question, which said, which of the following are common roles of, say, internal auditor, CRO, and this. And since I had sort of read through it, it kind of worked. So there's no surety on what exactly is going to come naturally, because there's so much to study. It's a competitive exam, but at least what you're reading, you make sure that that's very, very thorough. Also for module 2, unit 1 and unit 6 of module 2, you'll feel like, oh, I finished reading this in 5 minutes. Unit 1, I think, had a few of the case studies, and unit 6 also, I think, has 2 case studies towards the end. But I did go on to the essential external resources. I also Googled a few case studies to understand some things better. And the rest of the units 2, 3, 5 have a lot of repetition of your module 1.
Yeah, another thing is, as you're reading the question, sometimes your mind can play games and you can, sometimes end up reading things like, what I've done this. Like there was a question which says, what is not the role of an auditor? And
Yes.
I ended up reading it, what is the role of an auditor? You sometimes skip the not when you're reading under pressure or when you're fast reading something and out of habit, etc. So again, like breathe, take a pause. Don't take too much of a pause, but do take a pause. Read your and rely on your gut as well.
Yeah, I agree. Kajal passing percentage, yeah, around 60%.
Any other questions? Anything I can help with?
All of you have chosen your exam centers. Yeah, so I will be also, IRM India team will also be sending out an email for confirmation of your exam center. So if you could just reply to that email, I think it will be reaching you all tomorrow as to which center and the location of the center that you have chosen. How many of you are from Mumbai? None. I think Kajal, Maithili is from Mumbai, Kajal is from Mumbai. Anmol also, I think she was there for the alumni meet. Great. Any other questions, key takeaways? I hope, we were able to help you. Don't be scared. Don't be nervous. I'd say be confident. I think all of you are going to be passing with flying colors. Read all your material well. Keep rereading. Don't be scared about memorizing or forgetting things. At least what you know, I'd say focus on that and read. You should be good to go. The good part here is there is no negative marking, for your wrong answer. So at least you are saved that bit of your marks as well. Anmol, do we have like a hall ticket or something to carry at the exam center? You don't have any hall ticket or anything.
Just carry your ID card. I mean,
Correct.
I'm sharing with my experience. If it's a
Yes,
common, center where there are multiple competitive exams being held,
correct.
carry your ID card. They'll ask you to deposit your items, etc. You will get an exhaustive email detailing these things as well. So IRM will send. I at least got that email from.
Yeah, all of them, all of you all will be getting an email. You're already receiving emails from exams ID, student queries is there. Pearson would have sent you the authorization to test email for confirming all your exam centers. So everything will be mentioned even closer to the exam, what you need to take, what all of it will be there. So don't worry. Okay, I think we're good to go. Good luck to all of you. Thank you so much, Toral, for joining in and helping. Since you recently cleared the exam, I think it really, really helped all the students, get a key takeaway on what to focus on, what not to do, tips and tricks, and, how much to be prepared for the examination. Thank you, all of you.